So today's topic of conversation is a controversial one. It is one that tends to elicit very strong reactions from people who are involved with it. It's AI. And specifically what I want to do is two things, is have a general discussion around the usage of AI as it becomes more and more prevalent in not just everyday life, but the Star Wars realm in general, and also to talk about a specific fan film that really brought about this conversation for me, as someone had directed my attention to social media to view this 12-minute long fan film that has been made using all AI. There's no human actors. I believe all the voices are AI, and it's all been generated by a computer. And yes, there is someone behind that putting in the script, putting in the information, but it is still mostly computer generated, and that has again sprung up a huge amount of conversation around AI in general. So I want to, again, firstly look at this fan film because I don't enjoy necessarily knocking anyone's work, especially fan films, because there is typically a lot of genuine enthusiasm and a lot of hard work that goes into these things. That's why I tend to avoid posting any reactions or reviews to fan films. I know there's people out there like Cal Catan who, thrive on that kind of thing, and more power to them. It does help, kind of advertise fan films in general, and I think that's a good thing. I'm a big proponent of people being able to take their own creativity, making something that is, their own, even if it's using an IP that they love like Star Wars, and being able to show it to the world, showing what their vision of something is like. Obviously, there are limits as to what is acceptable, given the fact that you are using a Disney IP. But, you can find all kinds of wacky and strange creations out there in the fan film realm. Obviously, some better than others, but typically the same can be said for most of them, is that there is a heart and a passion there that has to be admired. And again, my credit goes out to anyone that has ever made and published a fan film, because it can't be easy to put yourself out there into the world, to have your creative vision challenged and appraised. So there is a lot of credit that needs to go to these people who do make these fan films, and in a way they keep the IP alive. It keeps the interest going in the background, and it does open up a lot of different avenues for people to consider. And so, again, this isn't me trying to criticize fan films in any way, shape or form, but this specific fan film, which again, as far as I'm aware, is the first one that I've known about that is completely AI generated, is again garnering a lot of conversation, to the point where Forbes published an article, and I think this is a bit of hyperbole, where it said the best Star Wars movie in years is AI made. And that's kind of where the problem comes in for me, is that that's clearly a hyperbolic statement, because this fan film, and I'm going to show very limited amounts of it, it's called The Ghost's Apprentice. You can find it out there on social media. It's made by someone called Cavan the Kid. And again, I can appreciate the desire to create something. However, my issues definitely come about from the quality of this and the usage of AI to such a degree that you have to now start to consider those moral implications in using AI to such an extent. So the fan film itself is nothing special in terms of the story. It's kind of a generic short film about a young apprentice, growing up into their power and challenging a Sith to save people from certain doom. Again, no issues with the premise of the story. It's simple, it's to the point, it's kind of a typical, good guy versus bad guy story that might eventually lead on to something more. It is a case of looking at this fan film and the quality of it. What I would say is that, yes, it was far better than I expected for something that was AI generated. That's not to say it was good. It's just, again, me saying that I was impressed with how far AI has come over the last few years to create something that didn't have you at least every second of every frame noticing something that wasn't correct. I'm sure that you've all seen older versions of AI videos. I think there's one specifically of like Will Smith eating spaghetti that just clearly is not sensible. It's just all over the place. It's like a fever dream. And that's what I've always thought of AI generated clips, is when you're ill and you're having these dreams that are really kind of like delusions. They're like fever dreams. That's what it's always kind of felt like to me. So this, at the very least, should get some credit for not being that, but it's still not good. You look at the actual fan film itself, and there are still plenty of little imperfections in there, which I guess people should expect, given that it's not a perfected method of making, a film. AI is still got a long way to go before it is completely unnoticeable to the human eye, until we get out of that uncanny valley area. And, there are people pushing for us to get to that point. The issues that I've got with this fan film is that, not only do you have a completely emotionless and dead kind of set of characters, the voices, because they're all AI generated, are very dead, or at least I hope they're AI generated, because if not, the voice acting is atrocious, because again, it sounds very much like, and I criticised Disney for this at the time, or Lucasfilm, it does sound like in the Book of Boba Fett, when they used an AI synthesizer to recreate Mark Hamill's voice. It sounded dead, it sounded flat, and that kind of takes you out of it, because immediately you can't connect because there's no emotion there. And that's AI. AI lacks emotion for me, especially when it comes to audio. So in this fan film, there was a few things I noticed, like firstly, the very awkward saucer-shaped ship at the beginning that it kind of doesn't maintain its shape between shots. At one point it's a saucer, and then it's got more of a narrow front when it changes perspective. Again, there are some issues with the little details in many of the shots. Where it really starts to fall down is when it gets to the lightsaber fight at the end. And again, I know that the person who was programming this and who put this vision down on paper, is probably very happy with it. And again, I'm not trying to, bring them down, but it's an absolutely atrocious fight from any perspective. The only perspective you could probably compare it and say it's a good thing is if you had made something similar with AI a year ago and looked for the improvements from that. In terms of the fight, it is kind of awful. And the thing that really bugs me, and this is where I think a lot of my issues with something like AI is that there are people in the comments who are praising this as great, better than Disney, better than Lucasfilm. And that's where I've got a problem, because people will, as with a lot of things these days, make hyperbolic statements because it supports their overall position on a thing. So if you're someone who really advocates for AI and really wants AI to succeed and really wants to put across this opinion that AI is the future, you might fall into the trap of backing something that is, pretty bad from a kind of a neutral perspective. If someone who has no investments in AI one way or the other might be able to sit there and say, no, I don't think that's good, you might become hyperbolic, like that Forbes article, and start to say, well, this is better than anything that Lucasfilm could do or Disney could do because it supports your position. And again, it's that kind of confirmation bias that we see in a lot of areas of life at the moment. And that annoys me because, you have to be able to be upfront and open about things like this. Is it the best AI fan film I've seen? Yes. Is it good? No. That's the difference there. And certainly it is not better than anything Lucasfilm's come up with, because it's a generic story. It really is. And again, that's not a criticism of the creator. You can only do so much of a short amount of time. But it's when people try and compare it with the big things, that's where you have to step back and say, hang on a minute, no, this is not as good as Disney. Let's just be real for a second, because when you become, when you start to become so belligerent that you will start to defend something that is undefensible just because it barbs Lucasfilm and Disney, we're not having a serious grown-up conversation at that point. And that's what we really need to have with AI. Because as I say, this fan film, I'm sure a lot of work and passion went into it. It, unfortunately for me, in my own opinion, didn't turn out to be good whatsoever. Again, people's opinions on that will differ. But it also starts to bring up again the question of moral implications of using AI here. Because what this has done, and whether Cavan the Kid would have ever had gone out and made a fan film himself, I don't know. I don't know if he's got any history. He just describes himself as an AI fan film creator. So that says to me that he does this exclusively. He doesn't go out and create physical films. It's just all done computer generated. And so this is where the issue is going to start to come in. Because if this had been an actual physical fan film, you would have people who would be able to gain experience and possibly employment through, the acting side, the editing side, all the bits that go into making a film, camera work, cinematography, editing, directing. There's all these opportunities that people will be missing out on because it's decided to have been done in a computer. And when you start to look at that, and that's small scale, that's small fry when it comes to the larger argument when industries try and implement this as a wide-scale solution to what they may see as an expensive problem. If you can cut away an entire film crew and replace them with an AI studio that you can pay a fraction of the cost for, well, what's stopping a Disney from doing that? And at that point, you have to ask yourself, well, is it morally okay for us to be using this technology and encouraging its use that will eventually see people fall out of work because of it? And I suppose in a way it might be very similar to, the development of the automobile and how, that has kind of made previous industries irrelevant. And so, you see bicycle manufacturers lose out massive amounts of business when cars became commonplace. It's kind of, there is a natural element to it of progression, of technological development. But when you mix this in with the greed of major corporations and the worst elements of capitalism, what do we decide to do with this on small scales? Do we decide to just say, well, there's nothing that we can do, we'll just have to handle it? Or do we actually speak up and say, hey, this isn't right, we shouldn't be encouraging this, we should be waiting for a more natural evolution of this technology and implement it where it's really needed? Because I'm not saying there's no use for AI. There absolutely is uses for AI out there, but I don't think it should be in the film and TV realm. And specifically when we're talking about fan films, and there will be an issue of, well, if everyone can use AI, and everyone can do this, because apparently it only costs the creator like $120, we're going to end up with just floods and floods of fan films that I'm sure on the face of it, the idea of having mass amounts of fan films is great to hear. But when you flood the market, it all becomes irrelevant. It becomes so hard to keep track of, and the quality, the average quality of a fan film, which, again, I'm not saying these are all Hollywood style movies. They're not, you can tell they're homemade fan films in a lot of cases, but again, there's that kind of genuine passion and desire behind it that you can see on the screen, and there's people gaining valuable experience, people who may want to be actors or directors, work in the film industry. There's great experience to be garnered from this, and if you end up switching over to AI, people are going to lose those opportunities. People are going to lose that passion for the human sort of driven film. And so it's a difficult argument to have. Again, for me, I would like to see AI really restricted in what they decide to use it for. And it's not surprising to me that Disney as well seems to be coming down quite hard on these projects specifically that are using AI. And again, I believe that's from an altruistic motive because Disney wants to make sure that AI doesn't flood the market? Not particularly. I think it's because they realize that if they allow AI to come in and people, take that as a carte blanche to start making their own fan films, there is that possibility that there's going to be so many stories out there that they themselves might want to capitalize on. It will cause more dissent in the fan base because people will use that typical argument of, well, look what could have happened and what could have been. So it doesn't surprise me that they are starting to hammer down on some of that. And that is within their right, to be honest. They don't have a God-given right to let anyone make a fan film. But for the most part, they, do give permission for people to make those home sort of made films, which is really nice to see, because again, it keeps the community connected. But I believe that this cavern has had some issues in the past with Disney taking down their projects, and if they are AI generated, I gotta say I'm kind of on Disney's side with that. But again, there is no disputing that AI is going to have its place in our life going forward. I just think it really needs to be very, very, very carefully implemented. I mean, the strikes from a couple of years ago were supposedly all around the implementation of AI, because people felt threatened by it. People felt like their jobs were at risk because they could be replaced by AI, and AI is never going to be a suitable replacement for me for a genuine human being. And again, whether that takes 10 years, 20 years, 100 years for AI to truly become an unmistakable replacement, to the point where you cannot differentiate between something that's been made by a real person or made by a computer, it doesn't matter to me, because I never want us to get to that point, because it will take away a lot of the artistry, the creativity, that is so prominent. And how many filmmakers, directors have had their start making their own films? That we don't want that to die out. We really don't. So when it comes to, AI stuff, you look at some of the crap as well, like Star Wars Theory remaking Heir to the Empire using AI. It's crap. It really is. It's lazy. That's really, I guess that's my biggest issue, is that it's just a lazy way of people being able to make something, themselves, rather than putting in the artistic and creative effort to go out and film something themselves and make something. And, again, I have got massive respect for everyone who does that, but I really don't want to see, this start to creep in. And like crypto, it is a space that we have to be very, very wary of, because there are people who will come in and take advantage of it. How many people have been scammed by crypto in the 2 decades that it's been around? Lots of people have lost a lot of money because of, immoral practices. And I see crypto and AI in the same realm. The same kinds of people tend to, propagate both sides. It's like they are massive supporters of AI and crypto. And I'm not saying that these people are seeing those same abilities to defraud people using AI, but it is going to be possible. So, again, I think we need less hyperbole, less talking about how this is the best Star Wars film ever made since Disney took over, and let's just be realistic. It is the best AI-made fan film I've ever seen, but it's a bad fan film. I don't like the moral implications behind it. I don't think it's a good fan film. I don't think the story is very good. I don't think the fight is very good. I don't think it's better than anything that Lucasfilm has done. So let's just have those open and honest conversations. Yes, AI is going to come in at some point, but I don't want to see Disney using AI to replace actors and to bring back actors from the dead and to, voice over things. I want to see people do that. I want to see recasting if that's necessary. I want to see people who are employed and become really, really genuinely good at their craft. Do you think that something like ILM could have been possible in today's day and age if it was all AI? No, ILM began because it was people who were passionate about their craft, people who had genuine skills, who had to come together and, create something truly artistically unique that only can come from a human brain. Now, if you replace that with all AI, yes, someone can come in with a genuinely creative idea, but then they type it into their screen and it's up to that AI, that computer, to then bring that to life. And I don't think that AI will ever get to the point where it can differentiate itself enough to create that truly human perspective, to create the realm of, sort of different styles that we have. You've got a Quentin Tarantino who makes a certain type of film. On the other side, you're going to have someone like a Rian Johnson who makes a certain type of film. Everyone has a style. But AI is going to find that very difficult to replicate. It's going to all have that same feel. And I just think that it is a shame that we are heading down that road. And this is the first in a warning sign for me. Let's not do this. Sure, you've shown it can be done. I'm sure that you're very happy, Cavan, the kid, that, you've been able to get a fan film put together. And, I admire your passion. but I don't admire the methods that you use. So please, everyone, let's just take a step back and chill on the AI for a second. But like I say, a lot of people have opinions one way or the other, so it's difficult to have this conversation and really try and convince people otherwise when they already have an opinion on it. So yeah, it's just an interesting topic I thought we could discuss. So I'd love to know your opinions on the usage of AI in general and in the Star Wars realm. You know, do you want to see more of it? Do you really, like me, want to kind of distance yourself from it and just see more kind of, you know, human-made, fan-driven, you know, physical, practical media? And it's interesting when you think about it, practical versus digital. That was the whole point. People really had a shtick up their arse about the prequels because it went away from the practical side and started to introduce the digital side. Now, I think a lot of those people who would have had problems with that are now advocating for the digital side. It's a bit strange, but here we are. Anyway, thank you for watching. I'll see you for the next one.